my soul.
Hello Austin, my name is Randy White and I'm your local Austin realtor. Today is the December 2021 market report and we're going to finish up this year discussing winter trends and how 2021 doesn't seem to give a crap about the winter trends. We're going to take a look at past sales and records and data, compare them to today, and see what we think about it. Now, before we get started, if you wouldn't mind hitting subscribe to my channel so you get notified each week when I upload these videos, whether it be about the real estate market or Austin. All right, let's get started. So to get us started, I want to ask you guys one question. When do listings tend to hit the market each year? In case you don't know the answer to that because you have a different livelihood than being a real estate agent, I will go ahead and tell you. It's going to be Q2, months April, May, and June. As you can see highlighted here, red hot months for real estate. But if this were a piece of paper, I would crumple that up and throw it away in the trash. Because the reality is, coming out of the pandemic and the last few years, seasonality and trends are just getting thrown right out the window. I have a case to build here that I think there is potential that we will see more listings come on this winter than we will for the rest of the year. Let's take a look at this quote that I have because I think it does a really good job of underscoring my suspicions here that there's a lot of listings to come this winter. So this is Jessica Lautz, and she's the VP of Demographics and Behavioral Insights at NAR. The quote says, "Home sellers have historically moved when something in their lives changed. A new baby, a marriage, a divorce, or a new job. The pandemic has impacted everyone, and for many this became an impetus to sell and make a housing trade." The quote then goes on to say, "The pandemic likely spurred occupants to shorten their home stay as tenure in the home decreased to 8 years from 10 years, according to the report. This is the largest single-year change in home tenure since NAR began collecting such data." In this graph, we're going all the way back to 1985, and you can see the average of people living in their homes for about 5 to 6 years, going on for a long time. And then we hit the housing crisis, and people start living in their homes a lot longer, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So for the last decade, the average was just over 9 years. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One reason is that people just simply didn't have the equity in their home to be able to make a move. And then other people, unfortunately, were underwater, with their mortgages, and they can't do anything with that. They have a lot of work to do. And then some people were just like, we don't need to do anything. I see what happened with the folks in 2008, and I don't want any part of that. So I'll just hang out right here in my house. I'm good. So now we're coming out of the pandemic and we're starting to see that number dip down a little bit. And I'm certainly not saying that this is the official new trend. Of course not. We need to have more time go on to see if this sticks, plays out, etc. I just think it's an interesting data point to notice, and I wonder if it could be all this pent-up seller demand of people needing to make that choice in the previous 10 years of hunkering down and staying in this house. And now the pandemic has created our new list of things that we need out of a home and reasons as to why we need the home to change, what we discussed earlier in the video. Combine that with everybody has plenty of equity after that appreciation year. And so all of these things are leading up to what I think could be a really interesting winter season. Let's take a look at what George Ratu at Realtor.com says. He says, "The pandemic has delayed plans for many Americans and homeowners looking to move on to the next stage of life, and that's no exception. Recent survey data suggests the majority of prospective sellers are actively preparing to enter the market this winter." So going back to what we were saying earlier, there is this very long list of reasons as to why people are needing to make the move. And then this study has come out that shows that those people have already started packing their bags. So in the study, they found that 65% of the people have already just listed or plan to in the winter. And then 93% of them have already started making the necessary steps towards listing, including working with a real estate agent. And then 36% of the people that were surveyed have said that they've already started to research the value of their home and those of their neighbors and started to make all the necessary repairs and decluttering tasks that come with it. So let's finish off this point with a quote from Danielle Hale, chief economist at Realtor.com. And she says, "Listings rose for the second week in a row, with our recent survey data suggesting that a growing share of homeowners are potential sellers eager to find new homes. There is reason to believe this may be the start of a welcome trend, especially as we move into the colder months." So we've had 2 really big years in real estate, and I really do think we're on our way to a 3rd year of heavy real estate transactions going on, and I particularly think it's going to be shoving its way through this winter season. Now, one last thing I want to talk about before we close up this market report is something that I think a lot of you guys are going to bring up and question about, which is, what about those rising interest rates? Isn't that going to have an effect on how many homes are sold? Because it's going to, really impact the market with rising home prices and rising home sales. So I have a lot of really great research to show you that kind of helps put that into perspective. So I want to show you guys a historical look at the impact of a rising interest rate environment on both home prices and home sales. So the very first one is showing that home prices are slightly affected by rising interest rates. So this is going all the way back to 2000. The line graph is showing interest rates, and the bar graph is showing appreciation or depreciation in the case of that space for the housing crisis time. And the quick point that I want to make is that for each rising interest rate environment, you'll notice that there is no depreciation except during that housing crisis. So start taking note of the different rising interest rate environments on this graph, and the very first one being in 2005, and so we have slightly less appreciation in 2006, and then the next one is in 2012, 13, and 14, and so in that very last year we have slightly less appreciation, and then the last one is going to be for 16, 17, 18. We go up and then we come back down a little bit. And so you can see that home price appreciation is slightly affected as the interest rates tick up. So although we do see that it is slightly affected, there is a point to be made that price appreciation is resistant to rising mortgage interest rates. And so let's take a look at Mark Fleming's quote on that. Mark Fleming says, "Home price appreciation is resistant to rising mortgage rates, primarily because most sellers would rather withdraw from the market than sell at lower prices, a phenomenon that we refer to as a downside sticky." So what that's trying to say is that sellers out there or homeowners would say, I'm really not getting as much as I want for the house, or my house is not appreciating as fast as I would like, and I'll just take it off the market. And so it's that thought or that attitude that helps kind of protect us from full-on depreciation from the rising mortgage interest rates, and rather just a slight effect on prices. So the next question is, are home sales affected by rising interest mortgage rates? So I got a graph for that. This one goes all the way back to 1999. The line graph again is going to be the mortgage interest rates, while the bar graph is home sales. And I've marked each of the rising mortgage interest rates environments in red, and you will see that those are not corresponding with lower home sales. So when people just have this thought and this assumption, you just gotta go back and look at the data. And I know that you guys don't have access to it, so that's the point of being a subscriber to my channel and all the other real estate professionals out there talking about this stuff. So the bottom line here is that context just really matters when it comes to discussing the housing market and purchasing demand. So what I see here is that the economy is improving and millennials continue to age into their prime home buying years and in very large numbers. And so that context is good for another strong housing market year. Should we expect a rising mortgage interest rate environment next year? Yeah. Do I think it's going to dramatically affect the housing market? No. I do think it's going to create change, and we do need to prepare for that to come, but it, again, is not going to be an enormous storm of anything. All right, guys, That does it for me today. That is my December 2021 end of the year market report for you. My name is Randy White. I am your local Austin realtor. If you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe to my channel so that you get notified each week whenever I send out a video about the real estate market or about having fun in Austin. It's a total pleasure doing these videos for you guys, and I will see you next week. Thank you.
Well, I'm going down to Austin, Texas. I'm going down to save my soul.